Hi, 8th grade friends. It's Miss Wanda from Waterfront Botanical Gardens, and today I'm doing the Making Space for a Change activity from the 8th grade JCPS Choice Board. I am going to share my screen with you today so you can see what I'm working on here. We have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share with you as we go through talking about this activity. Now, this activity is from the 4th NTI Choice Board on the Choice Portal. So if you're going through, if you're looking for it, it's not going to be in the first one or the second one or the third one. It's in the 3rd 8th grade Choice Portal on the portal link on JCPS's website. And this one is a project. So they do require you, what JCPS is looking for you to do with this one is to do a real project. So you're going to spend some time, you're going to do some design work, you're going to create a Google Slide document, and you're either going to put that into your digital backpack or you're going to share it with your teachers and your classmates on Google Classroom. So that's kind of up to your teacher. You want to talk to your teacher about that. This activity is all about taking a public space that's kind of run down or kind of gone by the wayside, that's kind of an eyesore, like a vacant lot or an old building or an open field that's overgrown, taking it and changing it into a public space that is like a public park or a green space where people can go and spend time, okay? Like a public spot, like a park, okay? So the task is to redesign a public space and make it more environmentally sustainable and beneficial to your community. So you're gonna kind of look around you in your neighborhood. You probably know that you have driven past an old store that's been closed for a long time and you keep thinking, man, when are they gonna do something with that store? Maybe you drive past a field and it's just an open field and there's not anything in there and the weeds are overgrown and it doesn't look great. And you think, man, if we could just take that and we could make it into a nice space for people to go, that's kind of your task. You're going to take something old and make it into something new. We're reusing the space to make a more environmentally sustainable spot. Well, what does it mean to be environmentally sustainable? I have included a definition in the video here. So to be environmentally sustainable or sustainable, there's the word, we're talking about the quality of not being harmful to the environment. So you are doing things that do not involve polluting, do not involve hurting the air and water and natural resources, doing things that are not like cutting down trees or pouring chemicals into the environment. So you're doing things that are good for the environment, and you're not depleting any of those natural resources like water or plants. And you're able, the plan for this environmental space means that in the years to come, for the foreseeable future, you're not going to be doing any of those things. You're going to continue to make sure that there's plenty of green space for animals to live and plenty of room for plants to grow, and that people are recycling instead of throwing trash on the ground or littering. So creating an environmentally sustainable spot. Benefits of a green space. So first and foremost, if we create a public park, it's going to help humans physically and mentally. So physically means that hopefully if we're creating a park, people are going to go there and they're going to jog and they're going to ride their bikes or they're going to go on a walk with their family and they're going to be moving their bodies. And we know that exercise helps with things like heart disease and prevents diabetes and helps with obesity. So moving around, being healthier, that's going to create healthier people, exercise. And in addition to that, when we exercise, we know that also improves our mental health or our emotional health. So if people are going out to a park, they're exercising, they're moving around, they're going to feel better. They're spending time outside, they're going to feel better. They're getting their endorphins going, they're getting their heart rate up. It's going to reduce their stress. We know that exercise and being outdoors is proven to reduce stress, set your mind at ease a little bit, help you be calm. So public spaces help human health. Also, we plant a lot of trees. You know, back from your photosynthesis lesson many, many years ago when you were in elementary school, that when we plant trees, that helps clean the air. Okay, so if we're planting a lot of trees in our green space, those trees are going to bring in all the carbon dioxide and they're going to give out clean oxygen and give us more clean air to breathe, and we definitely need that. So it creates good air quality. They're going to create homes for wildlife. If you're planting bushes and plants and trees and In creating a green space, you're going to create places for birds to live, for squirrels to live, for other Kentucky native animals like possums and raccoons to live, for bats to live, for insects to live. So you're creating more biodiversity within that space or that habitat. So you're creating homes for wildlife, and that's good because over time we have, as human beings, taken away a lot of our natural lands and removed a lot of homes for wildlife. So it's good to always try to give back or put some of those wildlife homes back. Another possible benefit of creating a green space is there's a chance it could help our economy. It could help our city make money. If you create a beautiful green space where there's going to be concerts and events and places where people can go and hear a lecture or go and see someone play at a concert, people are going to come to our city. And when people come to our city to see this green space, they're going to need a place to stay. So they're going to spend money in a hotel. They're going to need a place to eat, so they're going to spend money in our restaurants. They might go shopping and buy some souvenirs, and they're going to spend money in our shops. And so that helps our economy, that helps people have jobs here, and helps our city make money. And also, obviously, the obvious answer is that if we're creating a public park, if we're creating a public green space out of an old building or an old vacant lot, then that space is just going to look nicer. It's going to make our city look prettier. Here are some ideas. As you're doing your project, you're going to want to think about, okay, I'm going to create this space. I need it to be environmentally sound. I need it to be environmentally sustainable. What are some things that I want to add to it? What you want to do is you want to make sure you're using long-lasting materials, so you're not constantly buying new items to restore benches, or you're not buying new items to restore the bridge or to build more lampposts. So the things you buy, you want them to last a long time. So you're not constantly buying new stuff and replacing it, and then the old stuff just goes into a junkyard or a landfill. You want to use a restored natural area. Again, that's great. Let's restore some natural land. Let's put out there some new homes for wildlife, create some new homes for wildlife. You want to use mulch and fertilizer and compost that are organic, meaning not chemical fertilizers or chemical herbicides or chemical insecticides. You don't want to put stuff out there that's going to be bad for the plants and animals and can end up hurting all of our native things, especially our pollinators. A lot of times when we use different types of insecticide to kill bugs off, or different kinds of herbicide to kill weeds off, we can hurt our pollinators, like our bees and our butterflies, pretty badly. And we know that we need bees and butterflies to have a healthy, dynamic ecosystem. Stormwater capturing, if you guys have ever heard of like a rain barrel before, you're taking in the rainwater, you're saving it, and then you're using it later. That way you're not wasting it. So you can use it later to water your plants. Perhaps on your site, perhaps on your green space, you have some form of wetlands. That means like a marsh or a swampy space. Wetlands do a lot of things. First of all, they're a great place for migrating animals to stop and lay their eggs. They're a safe place. Typically swampy areas, there's not a lot of people walking through them. So they're a good place for animals to raise their young. They also help with flooding. They help to prevent flooding. They also can clean out some of the chemicals that come from acid rain or runoff, like chemical runoff that comes from the streets. They can kind of clean out that water and absorb that water before it rolls back into the river. So wetlands are a great extra little, in Louisiana they say lagniappe, but a little extra touch. I went to college in Louisiana, that's where that comes from. But a little extra touch of something nice to add some wetland space into your green space to help with that flood control. There should also be recycling bins for park patrons. You don't want people throwing their litter all over the ground. You also don't want people throwing away things into a garbage bin that's going to end up in a landfill and stay there for thousands of years. You'd much rather people put items into a recycling bin so those items can be taken to the recycling plant and made into something new. It's also a good idea to have on-site composting, which means not only are you recycling things like plastic bottles and paper and aluminum cans and cardboard, you're also recycling your food scraps, and those food scraps can be used. They're going to break down. You're going to add them with your grass cuttings and your leaves in the fall, and those food scraps are going to break down. They're going to become compost, and you can use that as one of those natural organic fertilizers instead of using a chemical fertilizer when you're growing your plants. So I want to give you some examples of some successful turnovers in public spaces. I want to start off with the Highline in New York. So at one point, the Highline in New York was an elevated train bridge that went over the city in New York. And before that, before 1933, the trains ran along the ground in New York City where the pedestrians were walking, where people were walking, and it was obviously really dangerous and not a good spot for the train to be. So they built this elevated train bridge so the train could travel above the pedestrians and the pedestrians could walk underneath. So this train bridge, the Highline, was used from 1933 into the 1980s. When it got into the 1980s, it wasn't being used as much. It got to the point where it wasn't being used at all because goods were being moved in different ways, like with trucks. So they were being taken into the city and taken away from the city in a different way and not being used by train or moved by train. So once the Highline closed down in the 1980s, it sat for a long time. It sat through the early 2000s. And as it sat there, obviously a lot of weeds grew up on it. A lot of graffiti was collected. It began to kind of crumble. It wasn't looking very great. People were considering it an eyesore. Which means it wasn't fun to look at. It wasn't nice to look at. The people that lived in New York didn't want to look at it anymore. And then they didn't really want the visitors who were coming to New York as tourists. They didn't really want them to see this ugly eyesore either. Parts of the Highline Bridge were demolished, but the rest of it, people started to brainstorm, how can they use the space? How can they create a sustainable green space for the future? So I know that my picture is kind of up here in the way, and I apologize for that. But if you look over at the pictures, this is what the Highline looks like now. So now it is a public park. In fact, they have 1.45 miles, so over a mile of public park. There's over 500 different types of trees and plants in this public park. There is walking spaces. They have public performances like musical performances for people to go and see. They have dancing sometimes. They have people that read poetry. They have people come and do public art installments. They have art for people to walk around and look at. They have public programming for families to come to. And again, it's just a nice place to walk around and relax. They have benches for people to sit and read if they'd like. So it's a public space. And in addition to being a public space, they also have community involvement programs where teenagers can come in and help plant the plants and work with the plants. So they have sort of a community engagement initiative that they're working with. So they've taken this place, this bridge that, yes, was used as a train bridge, but it also sat for a really long time and it wasn't really pretty, and they've made it into a beautiful park. So that's an example of success story that you could use to kind of think about, wow, if I'm gonna design my own public space, what's it gonna look like, or how can it be different? Let's talk about Louisville's Waterfront Park. When I was your age, when I was younger, Waterfront Park was not there. It was just along the river. There were many buildings and streets and industrial concrete and buildings that had been there for a very long time that were falling down and it was not as beautiful as it is today. But at some point in the mid-90s and the late 1990s, Waterfront Park was open. And here's a familiar scene. You've probably seen something like this before. You know, the sun is setting on our beautiful city and our beautiful skyline. There are people at Waterfront Park. There is this amazing green space. There's live music. You know that not too far from where this picture was taken is the playground. In fact, I'm seeing parts of the playground in the picture. Lots of trees, boats out on the water, people coming and people going. Here's another picture of the park at night. You can go in the evening or during the day with your family. You can toss a frisbee, you can walk your dog, you can ride your bike on the bike paths. It has the great fountains down there. We've got the splash park, which is great. I always love the splash park because it has the theme of the riverboat, just like the Belle of Louisville down there. So the splash pad, so you can go and play on a hot summer day. And then of course now, most recently, within the past decade or so, you know, we have built this really great walking bridge where you can walk from Louisville over to Indiana. and again, more green space for people to enjoy. So it is taking that spot. Our city took a place that wasn't necessarily very pretty, lots of old buildings, lots of concrete, lots of rundown old businesses, and took it and made it this beautiful green space for everyone in our community to enjoy. And also there are trees there where bugs and birds and living things can go and thrive. So in addition to Waterfront Park, I have to give a shout out to Waterfront Botanical Gardens. Of course, that's where I work. Waterfront Botanical Gardens, one of our big slogans is landfill to landmark, because long, long ago in the late 1930s, there were people that were living in the space. There were houses, it was a community. People were living in the space where Waterfront Botanical Gardens is being built. But because of a lot of flooding in the late 1930s and the early 1940s, all of the homes along the river were destroyed. And all of that wreckage, all of that rummage became what became to be known as the Ohio Street Dump. And if you take a look at this picture here up in the corner over by my face, that's a picture taken from the 1950s of the Ohio Street Dump. We have one remaining house, the Heigl House, which the facade is still present. You can see that near the entrance to Waterfront Park today. But all the area around it is, in 1953, was a dump, was a landfill where people threw their garbage. But now, many, many years later, we're taking that spot, and after making sure it's safe and making sure it's a steady, sturdy spot for us to be planting plants and a healthy spot for us to be planting plants, we're making a beautiful, sustainable public garden where people can come and learn about flowers and learn about the natural world and tour the gardens and also get all those great health benefits. So making a more sustainable green spot. All right, so here's what you guys are gonna do. So in your project, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna look around the city and you're gonna choose your spot. You know, like I said earlier, there's probably a spot in your city that you've passed a bunch of times and just thought, man, when are they gonna do something? When are they gonna do something with that space? So choosing your spot, what are you gonna beautify? What are you gonna make into a sustainable green space? And then kind of think about why you would like to do, why you choose that space. So choose a spot, think about why you would want to choose that space. Step 2 is design your space. So this can go in a couple different ways. If you're an artist, if you like to doodle, you can draw this. You can draw it out on paper and design it on paper. But if you'd rather create like a 3D model using recycled materials, which I love, you could use recycled materials, or even if you wanted to use clay or something to create a three-dimensional model of your public space, that would be cool too. If you don't want to do anything art related, if you'd rather just make some infographics and write about it, hey, that's cool too. If you're more of a wordsmith than an artist, hey, that's all right. You can create some infographics. Or if you would rather just design something digitally on your computer, like maybe you know of a cool program where you can make some 3D designs, that would be cool too. So step 3 is use Google Slides. So there is a specific set of Google Slides that JCPS wants you to use. And I have the link here in my video presentation, and we will also give you the link on our website. But you will click on that link and it will load up the Google Slides that JCPS wants you to use for your presentations. You'll just use those and put your design in. Good luck planning your public space. I hope you're staying healthy and stay curious. Have a great day.